Fantasy and Some Flights, exploring the realms of beer, board games, books, and bourbon.
Welcome to another fireside episode with Fantasy and Some Flights. I'm Nelson.
I'm Dalton.
And I was about to say what we're talking about tonight, but we're talking about everything tonight. So,
yes.
Yeah, we're talking about...
Tonight there are no rules.
There are no rules. The points are made up. And, that would be a good game show. Where like the points are made up. We should do that.
Yeah, right.
We're clever.
Hopefully nobody's like copyrighted it yet or anything.
Probably not. We're actually probably going to get taken down now. So it was a good run. I mean,
it was a good run. Yeah, we the one episode over 2 years. And just it's done.
No mercy whatsoever. But yeah, so on these fireside episodes, we haven't had one in a while, so I'll just re-explain the concept if you're new. So we take the time to just kind of chit-chat, talk about what we've been reading, what we've been watching, some things that we've been playing, because we do a lot of that stuff, and we try and keep our episodes relatively short. And if we talked about all of this stuff in our normal episodes, we would never end. So there would just be like hours and hours and hours of episode. And so in order to do that, we split it into two. And so now we have the fireside episodes. But
sorry, I didn't. You did a great job summarizing it. I just didn't have I didn't have anything to add. It was very well said.
I should have left something off so you could have jumped in.
There we go.
That's on me. That's my fault. That's my fault.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll remember it for next time.
Anyways, so we do have a flight section where, I mean, is it really an episode if we're not drinking?
Right. That's right. Keeps us going. So we do still have a flight section. I'll start us out tonight if you don't mind. If you're not gonna fight me on it, fine. He says, I'm drinking Strawberry Sky from Breckenridge. This is very much not a winter beer. It's like dead of winter right now. Both of us are under more than 6 inches of snow, and I'm drinking a Kolsch. So, fruity Kolsch at that.
There you go. Very nice.
This is a perfectly fine beer. It came in a mix pack that I got in the fall. Strawberry Sky, hinting obviously at like some strawberry type fruity flavors that are in it. It's very, I think any type of Kolsch is not going to be super aggressive in any direction, right? It's going to be fairly light. It's going to be crisp. It's going to be approachable. This beer is all of those things. Strawberry is obviously the most forward of the fruity flavors. It has like maybe a couple other citrus flavors in there, but it has kind of like that bitter, like aftertaste of like not that like strawberries have like a super bitter aftertaste, but if you were able to isolate just the bitter part, that's what it would taste like.
Gotcha.
Maybe like kind of the smell of strawberries or the taste if you chewed on a strawberry leaf. I don't know. Something like that.
Something you've done many times.
Many times, yeah, because I'm too lazy to just bite the leaves off. I just toss the whole thing in.
Yeah, it's more efficient.
That's right. Fiber. It's good for you.
Correct.
I'm fine with this beer. It has been a good, like, of the mix pack, it's been a good, I guess, working beer, which like I use a lot of like these lighter beers for. This is like 4.8% or something like that. So I'm not going to saw my finger off or something, when I'm working on house projects kind of beer.
That's good. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Overall, I'd give it 2 cheers. It's totally fine. I would take it if offered to me. I would probably never buy a 6-pack of this, but I wasn't disappointed to see that it was in, the mix pack kind of thing.
There you go. I like that. I like the definition of 2 cheers. I'm happy it's in a mix pack, but I'm not going to buy a 6-pack. That's a good definition of 2 cheers. I like it.
Yeah. Changing the game a little bit, man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Well, cheers. Yeah, I'm drinking Buffalo Trace. And so I don't know if I've ever actually had Buffalo Trace, right? I know I've never bought a bottle of Buffalo Trace, and I may have had it at like your place or something if you had slipped it to me, but it's never been yeah, that is the correct term. It's never been something that I've picked up before. And so I was at the store right before Snowmageddon, and I was like, you know what? We've talked about Buffalo Trace. Dalton has said that he likes Buffalo Trace. I'm going to pick it up. So, I mean, I just had to try it. And yeah, I mean, it's really good, right? Like it's a solid 3 cheers, right? I mean, it's a solid whiskey, right? And so, it's not my favorite whiskey. I would buy it. It's probably going to be in that rotation of affordable whiskeys to keep on the shelf once, just to have, right? Mm-hmm. So it feels very much like an Elijah Craig or that kind of price range, and as smooth as that, right? I think there's, what am I thinking of? Makers, right? Like that one is about that price range, but I just didn't enjoy Makers at all.
Yeah.
But this one is definitely significantly better than Makers. I don't know if it's as good as Elijah Craig, but I feel like our sponsors would pull if I said that it was better than Elijah Craig. So I don't want to risk the sponsorship dollars. So, but yeah, no, I'm really enjoying it. I think Buffalo Trace is a really solid whiskey, and it's a perfect one for a fireside, I figured. So
yeah, for sure. And I'm not surprised that you liked. I think I had mentioned that before. Like, it's a higher rye bourbon, where Makers is wheated, and Elijah Craig also has like a lot of rye flavors in it. So if I was going to like recommend another of the like cheap, quote unquote cheap,
mid-tier.
I say this because it's like we don't go cheaper.
Yeah, the bottle breaks when you drop it.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. That I would have assumed that you would like this one. Buffalo Trace also just has like a reminder. These are the people that do Pappy Van Winkle. These are the people that do Blanton's, the ones with the little horsies on the top. They do Eagle Rare, which is one that I had a couple episodes ago. Kind of the next tier. But obviously the distillery is actually called Buffalo Trace Distillery. So this is meant as their flagship. So it's a really good intro one, a really good one to try if you haven't.
Right. And I think like just a callback from that episode where you had the Eagle Rare, I think if I recall right, and maybe I'm thinking of a different one, but I think you were saying that it's not necessarily that much better than the Buffalo Trace. Was that?
I felt that way. I think that's not a popular opinion, but yeah, I was like for 20 extra bucks, I don't know that it really earns 20 extra bucks for me. Right. I was like, I just really like Buffalo Trace.
Right.
So I maybe just would stick with that.
That's fair. But yeah, so it's a 3 cheers. It's going to fit in the rotation. Right. It's not a starter, but it's definitely one of the first off the bench. That's that's Buffalo Trace. Good. By Buffalo Trace. I'm
glad you liked it.
Yeah, it's good.
Also, earlier, I just got to go back. You said like slip it to you as if like that makes it sound very sketchy. Like I'm like slipping you alcohol like that you didn't know. Like if I ever slipped it to you, you would have asked me for a whiskey and I would have given you this one and maybe just forgot to tell you what it was. But it's not like I would just be
I'm very aware of the connotation that I presented.
I'm not just spiking Nelson's drinks all the time unless he asks me to.
Yeah. And so, yeah, no, that is absolutely what I meant. Usually, like, I just like, hey, can I have something? And then whiskey appears. And it's pretty nice. It's a good system. I'm a fan of it, but I usually don't always remember what's in the glass. I'm sure you tell me, but let's be honest.
I think I generally tell you, but you're right. Like, sometimes it's like, you're already a couple drinks deep, which doesn't help. And then sometimes by the end of the night of having a couple of the same drink, then you no longer remember either.
Right. Yep.
Totally understandable. Yeah. I remember most of the time, so.
See. There you go. Perfect.
I remember for you.
And I appreciate that. Alrighty, so let's talk about what we have been doing. Do you want to do mind or table first? I don't. We can flip a coin.
Flip a coin. Let's do table.
Let's
do
do
table first. I think the main reason I want to start with table is because I've been really, really wanting to talk about Cthulhu Wars.
Yeah. Okay.
So we played Cthulhu Wars like 3-4 weeks ago, something like that. It was at a game night. We played it with our buddy Mike, who's also a listener on the podcast, and we played this one because Roberto, Sheer Boredom, had kind of recommended this as one of his all-time favorite games. I love Dudes on a Map games. I had never tried it, and so we played it over tabletop, and there was just so much that I enjoyed about this game. It had a really high level of asymmetry. That's something that we both really enjoy, right? But it very much felt like all three of the like ancient ones. You're basically playing one of the ancient ones from...
You're playing the baddies.
Yeah, you're playing the baddies, right? From the H.P. Lovecraft mythos. So I played Cthulhu, and you guys played ones that I couldn't pronounce.
Fair.
You played the yellow one, and he played the red one.
I was yellow. Yeah.
So anyway, so you spend the game, trying to summon your ancient one onto the board. It's this huge model that you get to like place down on the board, and lost some of its maybe allure because we were on Tabletop Simulator, but still felt really satisfying when you have like your little tiny cultists out there, and it's like, here comes Cthulhu, and it's like 30 times the size of the model, just like absolutely enormous. The core of the game, I think we all found pretty approachable, like pretty simple.
Yep.
It was a very easy game to like learn how to play, and then like learning how to play your ancient one was difficult. That's like where most of the difficulty kind of lay, was within the complexity of the asymmetry of the different ancient ones. But the game itself was like, it was like I always felt like I was functioning. I always felt like I was doing what I wanted to do. And if I like wanted to do something, it's like that's pretty simple. Like I knew how.
Yeah. Yep.
What was difficult was figuring out like what are the advantages that my guy gives, and like how do I take advantage of it. Like I think we all said I won mostly because I played the simplest of the ancient ones.
Yeah.
Cthulhu was like get on the board, attack stuff, and you're like, oh, I can do that.
Right. Yeah. I really enjoyed this game as well. And Dudes in the Map are not my favorite game. Not saying that I don't enjoy them. I'm just like coming from that perspective. It was an awesome game. So I love the asymmetry. The rules were, as you said, very straightforward, right? So there were only a couple things you could do on your turn, but then as you kind of went forward and did more, like unlocking new abilities and adding more stuff to your ancient one or your faction, then like the game scaled in complexity. And so it was nice in that sense, especially as a first play, right? When you first start, there's only a little bit that you can do, and you slowly unlock more abilities, and the game gets more complex over time. And so that made it very approachable and very like almost like unique in that sense.
Yeah.
And what I liked about it, I think my favorite thing about it was your faction has 6 agendas, I think is what they're. I don't quite remember what they're called.
They were like spells. Spell books, maybe.
Spell books.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So there were 6 spell books, and in order to unlock your spell book, you had to do an objective. And so your faction was fairly complex. And I'm saying yours isn't like the factions are fairly complex and fairly like different from each other. But each one of them has 6 of these spell books that you need to unlock in order to be in the running to win. And it tells you how to unlock those, and those are also faction specific. And so pretty much I just like picked one. I was like, okay, I want to do that. And like I felt like it wasn't like a great game for me, but I felt like I was functioning in the game just because it basically on my sheet said, hey, do this and you'll be fine type thing.
Yeah.
So that was really nice, and that was really great, especially for a first play.
I totally agree. I think that was my favorite mechanic in the game. First of all, that it did 2 things. It sort of like advanced, it was your tech tree. Like it advanced what you were capable of doing. It added special abilities. It added abilities for your monsters or things that you got to do on your turn as different actions and stuff. And so at the beginning of the game, it was all very simple for you. And by the end of the game, you felt enormous. You felt like you could do so much.
Yeah.
That was sort of coupled with the fact that throughout the game increased your sort of, I think it was power or something. It was like magic power or something but it was basically like your money.
Yeah.
And you had to spend this like magic power anytime you did anything. And at the beginning of the game, you have very little of it. And at the end of the game, you have a lot. And so you're able to take multiple actions per round. And so it felt like towards the, as the game went on, I was doing more, and there was kind of this like really fun power ramp going on. But getting back to the spell books, I think you're right that especially on a first play, the fact that it kind of gave you, here's your 6 objectives. You can do them in any order, but like these are the things that you need to get done. Figure out how to do that. Just gave you like a really good direction in a Dudes on a Map game that wasn't go kill your opponents, right? So there was combat on the board, but there was also like a lot of times where it's like we didn't really have a reason to fight each other. Like you can fight each other over like resources that are in the game, and so like sometimes you would do it just for that. But there were times where there was a lot of combat in a given round, and times where there wasn't so much.
Yeah, and every faction kind of has a different path to victory, right? You always are in the running, or like you win when you hit 30 points or whatever.
Yeah.
But each faction can get points in different ways sometimes. And so like there's like the main way, which is common amongst factions, but because of those spell books, like there are different ways. And so the faction that I was playing, I played fairly non-combative and did fairly okay, right? And so I thought that was a really unique take on like Dudes on the Map games, where there are factions that you don't need to just, hey, he's closest, I'm going to go kill him type gameplay. So I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we walked away from the table and kind of debriefed, the one thing we all kind of felt is we did feel a bit of a runaway leader kind of happening, and it came back to that power mechanic, that the amount of power that you are generating can be tied to a lot of things, but one thing that's mainly tied to is just kind of controlling certain areas on the board that have like these warp gates, and that's also kind of like the area where you summon monsters into. And because of that, like I over the course of the game became more powerful and had more like power and had more space. And I think it would have been difficult for any one player to like directly stop me from doing that. It would have taken like multiple players kind of ganging up against me, just because like at one point the game has a mechanic where like if at any point you gain like less than half of the power that another player gains in a round, then you gain half of their power instead. And I think one or two of you started
Mike and I
that.
triggered that on like the last round. So
yeah. And I don't know if that's just our inexperience. Like maybe you guys in a 3-player game, maybe that normally wouldn't happen. Maybe it's supposed to self-balance, but I didn't really see how the game, like mechanically, outside of just like social pressures, would have balanced like a runaway leader like that. It seemed to sort of like reward. Once you got ahead, you were ahead, and you were going to keep being ahead.
Yep. Because I think the reason for that is that the victory points and money or power were kind of tied together, right? So if you had more victory points, you had more power. Therefore, you're able to get more. And so I think...
And what he kind of means by that is like you had to basically spend some of your power in order to score more victory points in one of the game phases. Yeah.
And so I think that in a higher player count game, that problem goes away a little bit faster, right? Because if you have a 5-player game, then you have more people... Okay, Cthulhu is out plus 6 points on us. You have 2 people attacking Cthulhu and 3 people messing around doing something else, right? Like, so
trying to catch up or whatever.
I think the game can balance itself. I think that it just got amplified with the 3-player and inexperienced players in our case. So
yeah,
take it with a grain of salt because we've only played it once.
For sure. And especially because like Cthulhu's thing is kind of combat.
Right.
And so the fact that I got ahead, but was also maybe one of the harder people to like directly combat, it kind of just like exacerbated that problem, right? Like we didn't have the game knowledge and the acuity to know like how do you guys get around this, you know, how do you like fight it? But because of those things, definitely a game I think that we all came out of that we're like, we want to play this again, you know.
And like I want to say that we played it for the first time ever virtually, which I think expands the game a little bit. I think we finished in like an hour 40 or something like that. Like it was a shorter game, and like it felt like a very fulfilling dudes on a map experience.
Yeah.
And you usually don't get that in a sub 2 hour game.
Yeah, for sure.
I want to reiterate, I really like this game because I feel like we just talked shit about it for a little bit. But like I really like the game. I thought it was really good. I'm really looking forward to playing it again.
Yeah, for sure. It'll be interesting to get into the expansion content because I know there's quite a bit.
Right, yeah.
But we have no idea what it changes other than like a whole bunch of factions got added.
Just so everyone's aware, we played it online because I'm not able to take a second mortgage out on my house to buy the game. So
that's right. Yeah, unfortunately, Mike came out of the game like, how much is this game? I really want to buy this game. I really like it. And we're like, I got some bad news for you.
You don't like it that much.
How much do you like your car?
Yeah. Right. But yeah, no,
it's not quite that much, but it is like more than a couple hundred.
Yes. Just for the base game. Yeah. I played a new game recently online actually with the creator of the game. And so I played World Breakers. And so this is like it's a living card game. So we just had our living card game episode a couple episodes ago. And so I stream living card games, and the designer of this game reached out to me saying, "Hey, like, would you want to stream this game with me?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And so I got to play it. It's called World Breakers. And like I'm typically more a fan of cooperative living card games, and this was a head-to-head combative living card game. And so like I'm like, we'll see how it goes, but like I really enjoyed it. So in this game, it's an alternate 13th century like fall of the Mongolian Empire, and you're trying to like reunite like the fractured like different parts of the Mongolian Empire and like lead yourself to victory. So it's like alternate because there's like a little bit of like this special resource called Mythium, and like that's what you use to pay for cards. And so it's a head-to-head game, and there's asymmetry to it as well. So right now it's going on Kickstarter in March, and so there are 4 factions, and each faction plays completely differently, which I thought was just really interesting. So like I played a faction that was all about these locations. And so there's like units, there's events, and then there's locations in the game. And so when you play a location, then you can start discovering those locations for benefits. But if you get attacked, your opponent can destroy your locations. And so you have to play defensive in locations or like go and attack. And it was very much a back and forth game, right? So every single round, it was 5 actions on each side, and like so I would take an action, then the opponent would take an action, then I would take an action, then the opponent would take an action until round in. We would do kind of a cleanup. We checked and see if anyone got to 10 victory points. No, we flipped it and win again. And so it was a very back and forth, very like interesting tactical decisions, and I liked it way more than I thought I would. And so it was just like it was fun. I didn't look through my cards before I played, which probably gave me a strategic disadvantage, but
with the creator of the game,
of the game, I ended up winning, which I'm not sure if that was, toss me a bone or something, but
so you come out of it like, I really like this game.
Yeah, exactly. But there were a lot of unique concepts in the game, and I feel like that is hard at this point to do in a head-to-head game. And so the locations were really unique. All of the factions played differently. He was playing like a faction that does like high attack, high like strength units. And when you attack and there's not a defended attack, then you get a victory point. And so you're playing to 10. And so that's kind of his strategy, is to just wear you down. And then I'm playing the defensive. Then there was the die by 1,000 cuts faction, where it was like just flood the field with bunch of units and hope you win. And then there was the faction that was like the engineers, and so like they're out there with these amazing structures that can win them the game without ever attacking. And so it just seems very interesting. It's set up that they have the pre-constructed decks, and then also you can draft to play. So like a Magic the Gathering, like you open the box and draft. And so you can do that with just this game, and you draft cards, and then you build a deck out of the cards that you drafted. And after you draft, you pick your con, like your leader. So it was just like it was a unique take on it as a solo campaign too, which I didn't get into. But and the art is incredible. He got some of the same artists that did some of the art for Lord of the Rings and Arkham, and it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. So I really liked it. I'm definitely going to pick it up. It's just seems really cool. So
yeah. How did you guys get into at all like how deck building works in the game?
Okay, so the resources are common amongst all the factions, but there are 2 resource costs for each card. So you have to pay the mythium cost, which is like the money cost. But then there are some cards, like higher level cards, where you have to have standings in each one of in a faction to pay for it. So like I was playing, the pre-constructed decks are mono decks. There's 4 factions, 4 pre-constructed decks. So I was playing like the Stars faction deck.
Sure.
And so it was like, okay, I had to have 3 standing in the Stars faction to pay this card. Some cards give you standing in factions, and then there are like you can pay 2 mythium, like 2 money, to get a standing in any faction. And so in a mono deck, it's pretty easy to just say like, hey, like I'm just gonna bump this up as high as I can so I can pay for all my cards. And then some cards are like, reduce your standing in a faction to do this awesome effect or something like that. So there's that. But with deck building, because those cards are faction-specific cards, you can put any faction you want into the deck, and you just have to balance your standing in each one of the factions. And I think I don't think faction is the correct term for it, but that's what I'm calling it. And so he said that typically the better decks are dual faction decks. We're standing in 2 factions.
Okay.
He's doing a lot of playtesting, and he said that he's seen some successful tri-sphere decks, and 4 is kind of tri-sphere. That's the term in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
and it's going 4 is spreading yourself too thin. You're not going to be successful going 4, and that's what makes the draft really interesting. Is like you're drafting cards from all different spheres. And you have to balance your standing in each one of those. And so,
I think that's a really fun way to try and play a living card game, especially one that's like competitive, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's definitely a very unique idea, and a pretty unique setting. I love the idea for just like that kind of period and culture and that time point in history for setting for a game, because it lends itself actually to like very nice artwork. But just like not one that's like all that explored,
it's definitely very unique. But so I think that's hitting Kickstarter in March. I think around the start of March, and so pretty soon. And the all-in price points for one game without like the play mats and everything. It's only $30, and so it's a super affordable. Like $30 gets you the 4 factions and everything that you need to play. And so like,
yeah, and a solo campaign.
And so it's like at that point, so there are a lot of people from the Living Card Game Discord that watch the stream and were super interested in it. And there's been kind of a lull in Marvel Champions, like distribution. And so a lot of people are like, subscribe to that, which is like $16 a month for the new content and everything. And so like, I don't know if I want to support, or like, I don't know if I have like, want to do financial backing for another LCG. Like, I'm like, we've already missed 2 months. Like, you have $30 saved up already. So you can easily buy this. So, and he does plan on putting out future content. I kind of asked him about that. He goes, I'm just trying to get this out first, but there will be more stuff. I think it's like 3 or 4 new things a year. And so, I mean, that's a lot of good content right there.
Yeah,
so,
for sure. And it's cool to support we actually talked about this in Living Card Game, that like, this is a really hard genre to kickstart on your own. It's a really hard indie genre. It typically takes, like an enormous company who has the resources to put out that amount of content consistently.
Right.
So, very high respect for him for tackling it in this way, for one. And then for two, like, just the fact that he's able to produce it at this price point, a card a game that has this amount of artwork and this amount of design and play testing that has to go into it, that's a real accomplishment, and it's very exciting. I'm excited to try it.
Yeah, we'll have to do it. It's on TTS, and so if you're interested in that, you can find it on TTS, and we'll definitely play it. But that would be a good one to have a weeknight and just sit down and play, because like I intentionally went through and explained all my actions, because that's what I like to do when I'm streaming, because I want it to be open for people, and like if like people aren't super familiar with the game, I want them to understand what I'm doing. And so I did that with this game a little bit cryptically, because I didn't want the person sitting across the table from me to know exactly what was in my hand. But like, so I was reading all the cards, and I think we finished in an hour. Like,
awesome.
And without doing that, I mean, it's a 20-minute game, right? It's a very quick, fast-paced 20-minute game. So
sweet.
Just awesome.
Does it go more than 2?
Yeah, I think so.
I'm just curious how that would work. Maybe it has a feel of like, Magic the Gathering Commander style or something like that. Everyone, kind of able to attack each other or whatever. But
yeah, I don't think so. So if you buy multiple cores, then you can support a multiple person draft to do like a tournament style, but I think it's just head-to-head at the solo or head-to-head at this point.
Yeah.
But
which I don't mind that, given the design of it. Like, I don't think that 3-person head-to-head in this style game always works very well.
Yeah. Yep. So. Exactly. But
cool.
I have one more thing for table. Do you have anything for table?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so I know we've been talking about table a lot, but I want to get this out there because I feel bad if I didn't. So I finally got to play the expansion to Lost Ruins of Arnak. So it's the Expedition Leaders expansion. And so this is something that I picked up at PAX Unplugged back in December? Oh my gosh, that was December.
It was December, yeah.
Oh, jeez. Okay, so I picked it up at PAX Unplugged, and I, these grand plans to play it as soon as I got home, and it just... that didn't happen, and then it kind of sat on my shelf, and so I finally got to play it, and I need to play it more, but this would make a running for one of my top expansions of all time.
Oh wow.
Yes, it adds asymmetry, which is a huge thing. I love that for me, but it does it in a way that like gives you a path, right? I think one of the things in Arnak is that there are so many things to do, right? There's the temple check, there's exploring, there's deck building, there's, trying to figure out all of these different paths and navigate those. And the expansion, hey, you're really good at exploring, go explore. And it's like, okay, like I can do that. It gives me boons and, abilities to go explore. So let's do that. Yeah. And so it gives you the special abilities of your player cards or player boards. It changes your starting hand completely. So everyone's starting hand is now different, and it has player specific like cards, which make it really interesting. And they felt pretty balanced. I think like kind of the same situation that we had in Cthulhu Wars. I think I had a little bit easier of a faction the first time I played than my wife. And so it felt slightly unbalanced in that sense. But I think that like it just takes a little bit more knowledge of the game to play hers better, but it could be better. It comes with 2 new temple tracks, more guardians, more cards, more, and it was just if I could write an expansion for the game, this is it. And it was awesome. I was so impressed with it. It blew me away. It absolutely blew me away. And so Arnak is a very high rated game for me in the last one of the highest rated games in the last, I don't know, year for me. And this expansion only made it better. And so I needed to say something about it before our next episode because I just played it and I wanted to get it out there.
Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, Leaders style expansions are going to be some of the best, right? Like Seven Wonders Leaders was such an important and massive expansion that we almost categorize other expansions by it now.
Right.
And this one even kind of adopted the name, right? So, and I could definitely see how it would need it. I think I talked about that in my first play of it. It was just like, I feel like I didn't get to explore all of the game here. You know, like the game isn't quite long enough to touch every aspect of it. And that's not like a fault of the game by any means. It's just a design decision. But as a result of that, it would have been really nice, I think, to have like a leader in my first play to be like, where should I kind of go? You know, because it was so hard to like read the board and all the options that you have and like decide what the best path is. So I ended up kind of just doing a little bit of all of them, and that was kind of a struggle. So, anyways, I think I would be excited for sure to play the game again under that expansion.
Yeah, and it would be something that I think with a first play, I would definitely just bring out the expansion at that point.
Yeah.
That it gives those paths, and it just helps with that. When I say asymmetry, like they are fairly asynchronous. Like, no, that's not the right word. They are fairly different. Like one faction only has 1 pawn, but can pay to bring that pawn back, like their worker placement. One faction has 3 pawns. And like my faction had like this eagle that could go scout for me and get resources and bring them back. And it was just like, but there's like a whole mechanic on how to send the eagle out further and further for better rewards. And it was like, there's one that like wants to grab the fear cards, which are like curses and dominion. They're just dead cards. But whenever he exiles them or like banishes them or trashes them, he gets bonuses for that. And so it was just like a, high risk, high reward type setting. And so that's the one I'm most excited to play. I just think that just seems like kind of
the
fun
one that breaks the rules the most.
Breaks the rules the most. Yeah, that's what I'm going for. So,
very
cool. But yeah, it was a really cool expansion for a really good game.
Awesome.
Alrighty, so we've talked about games a good bit, which is always fun. But let's hop into another fun topic, and let's talk about what's been on our mind. So we have been we got to talk a little bit about games, not in this episode, but the previous one. But we've got a while since we've talked about what we've been reading. So, Dalton, what have you been reading or watching?
Yeah, reading or watching. So I finished. So I've been doing 2 things. I've been reading real books and listening to audiobooks, smart. Side by side. So I've already talked in the last episode that I finished Rhythm of War recently. I was reading a physical copy of that. So that like kind of blocked out that spot for like 3 or 4 months. And so I did finish that. I had been listening to a lot of Wheel of Time. So like we made the commitment back in like October, November to listen to Wheel of Time. And so I have finished book 3 now.
So on average, we have finished 2 books.
Nice.
No.
Wait, did you finish the first book?
No, not quite.
Yeah, I was about to say, I didn't think you finished the first book.
It's a little bit less than 2 books on average.
Yeah.
But I do want to get back into it. I switched to audiobook, and that was actually a lot harder of a transition to make. I was reading it, and I switched to audiobook, and I want to just go back to reading it because for some reason, it's just like if I had started with audio, I would have been fine. But switching, I just for whatever reason, my mind, and I just need to. Honestly, it's just I just need to make time to read.
Yeah,
but
I think one of the hardest things about audiobook is there's like multiple characters that are named almost the same name. Like there's like an Egwene and an Elaine, and it's like why did you do that?
Why?
And
literally,
they're like both
you had thousands of other sounds you could have used.
So many names, and they're like both like of relatively the same age, and they're both female, obviously, and like they're just like very similar characters, and they basically have the same name. It's like, come on, why'd you do that? There are multiple examples of him like doing that. And it's like at some point, I remember with like one of the characters, I I didn't realize that they were two different characters until they were in the same scene. Like they were in they like ended up in the same scene, and he was like, "Oh yeah, this person and this person." I was like, "Those are two people?" Like, whoa! I just thought that was the same person this whole time. That's been a little annoying, but yes, I finished book 3. That means I'm about 20%, 21% through the series.
Yeah, I was talking with someone today about Wheel of Time, and they had read through it twice, and they were saying that it is a long read that is 100% worth the payoff. And so, like, I keep hearing that from people, and if that is a consistent statement, that's really exciting to me, because usually I think that finishing series are hard. And he said that it does lag a little bit there in the middle, but he goes, it's 100% worth it. So I really do need to get back into it. But like, has the story been super interesting and still really exciting through book 3 for you?
I would say like book 2, I felt like was a real high point. We've heard someone say that if you read book 2, you're going to read the whole series. And true? I thought book 2 was very successful. I thought it had a lot of really cool things going on. I really liked like what they were doing with what he was doing with some of the characters and everything. Book 3 felt a little, it was confusing. Like, so I think there were not like in storyline, but in some of the decisions, like he sort of recharacterized one of the characters a little bit, and he sort of had to. It was sort of like this major defining thing about this character from a storyline perspective was removed, and so that character needed like a new thing, like it needed to like be or do something new.
Gotcha.
And so I thought that transition was like a little bit rough and like surprising. It's like, oh, okay, this character's like going in this direction now, and the direction that they're going in is actually very fun. Like I like it a lot, but it was just like kind of jarring a little bit. Like, oh, this feels like a different character now. So that was like a little bit confusing. And I also thought that like the overarching plot of book 3 was very similar to book 2. Like it felt a little episodic in that sense, that like it was like, did I just read this book? From like again from an overarching plot perspective. And now the characters are very different. And they're doing things in different ways and everything. But the like large, the way the chess pieces are moving on the board kind of thing, almost the strategy level. Like the strategy of the plot line felt the same. And the tactics felt different. And I guess I just wasn't 100% into that. I thought that was maybe a little bit lazy, might be too strong of a word, but it was just close enough, like just repetitive enough that I was like, I was having trouble kind of getting through it. So I still would like to continue in the series. I don't know if I'm going to read all 14. Like that's just a lot, but I read like 12 of the Expeditionary Force series, and that's easily critically a worse book, So,
yeah.
like, Wheel of Time is better, so I should get through it. But
I think the argument there is that Expeditionary Force is a lot easier to listen to.
It is substantially easier.
It's funny. It's lighthearted. It's not this heavy story that you're reading through, and so there is that going for it. It's almost one of these like. It's not, but it's akin to like a guilty pleasure, just like, oh yeah, this is kind of fun, let's do it, like type
for
thing.
Sure.
So there is that.
Yeah, we did finish the show. So the first season has completed of the show. They're filming the second season, I believe now. I believe they're working on filming it now. I think the first episode was one of my least favorites. Unfortunately, I also thought the last episode of the season was like one of my least favorites in the season. I just like I didn't like the last episode.
Gotcha.
And I think overall it's like a 6.5 or a 7 out of 10 type of show. Like it's good. It's good. Yeah. It's worth watching. It's not groundbreaking. It's not Breaking Bad or
right.
It's not first 5 seasons of Game of Thrones. Like it's not that good. And I do think that like some funding things are holding them back. So I hope that the show kind of like grows into its own. I hope it kind of gets the funding it needs. I hope that the actors kind of settle in. It figures out like kind of who it wants to be as a show. I felt like a couple different like tone shifts in different episodes, maybe as things were being received by the audience and they were kind of trying to account for that or something. I don't know. Just some of those things were but they were just a little bit confusing. But it seems like a good implementation. It has its own interpretations, definitely. But I think the first episode, I was like, these interpretations suck. Like, this is stupid. And once they backed off of those things and the show kind of progressed, it's like, I'm minding the interpretations less. I think they're ending up in the same place in the major story points. They're just kind of choosing some slightly different paths to get there so that they have some uniqueness and they have some interpretation,
Yeah.
I think that's okay.
Yeah. So so we had kind of heard that it doesn't necessarily follow the first book all that much. So is it something that I could watch without finishing the first book, or do you recommend finishing the first book or the first X amount of books before starting the show?
Yeah, I think you should either read the first book or watch the show. I will also say that they did make some decisions to, I don't know about spoil. Spoil is a strong word, but I don't have another word for it. So, but they decided to show some things that would normally have been revealed in later books.
Okay.
It's a restriction of the media. Like there are some things, like imagine, and this is not what happened, but imagine that in a book, the author is keeping from you that one character is actually another character, right? So like one character is this other character in disguise.
Okay.
And the author's keeping that from you. So you see character A and character B, and they're interacting, and they're never in the same room. And then later in the book, the author reveals that character A and character B are the same person. A TV show would not be able to do that, right? A TV show would have to cast one actor or actress, and that person would have to play the character in all of the scenes, and the audience immediately would realize, like, oh, that's the same person. And so, like, it wouldn't be able to be told in the same way. And Wheel of Time has to do, like, some of the same. It's not that exact scenario, but it's a similar concept. They have to, like, do some things like that.
Yeah. I feel like that trick would work on me if you changed the hair. What I've realized about myself is that I cannot tell people apart. Like, I look at the hair, and if the hair is the same, I'm like, oh yeah, that's that person. Yeah. I like, for some reason, like my wife will be like, oh, that's that guy. I was like, okay. Like I just like, if I just look at a face, I cannot. My mind just doesn't work that way. I'm just like, oh yeah, okay. Like, I know Dalton. I know Dalton's the curly hair. He has curly black hair. That's what I know about Dalton. Like,
do you like mistake people on the street? Like, hey, Dalton.
It's very hard. It's very hard. Yeah. You moved back. You're here. You're my neighbor.
Right.
That interaction did go over fairly poorly, I would say.
Yeah. Watching Lord of the Rings, and like Frodo comes on the screen. He's like, Dalton.
Yeah. Yeah. But no, and so that is a little frustrating in that sense that there are just some literary devices that you can employ in a book that don't translate well to like a visual medium. That's hard, but I understand that. And like in your opinion, is it worth, like, is it big enough to not watch the show in your
No, I think
opinion?
I think you should finish the first book and then you should watch the show.
Okay. Cool.
Because it does like end, the major plot line ends at the point where book one ends.
Okay.
So it's not like spoiling forward into book two from like plot line elements. It's just like a couple of things. Like, it's such a massive universe that, like, for like little things to get like revealed here and there out of order isn't like, it's really not a big deal.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I think if you watch, like, if you tried to read and watch at the same time, then there would be things revealed to you before it was revealed to you in the book that might be a little bit disappointing.
Got it. Okay. Okay. Well, that's good. I think I have like 40% left in the book. I just need to. Hey, instead of watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine tonight, I'm going to read.
Yes.
So it's
do
one of those
reading before bed. No.
Do my reading before bed. Yes, exactly. So. Yeah. So I have been reading a book. I started reading a book, and like, I think this is embarrassing to anyone who's actually read the book when I say I've started reading a book and I haven't finished it, but I started reading Dunwich Horror by H.P. Lovecraft. And so this is in that Cthulhu mythos, like the Cthulhu Wars, but I'm playing through the Dunwich Legacy campaign for Arkham Horror right now, which is a sequel to that book, which I thought was just a really unique and interesting idea, right? The game tells a story that's a sequel to a book. And so I was like, I'll read the book. And the book is like 80 pages, so like it's more of a short story. So like, saying I've started reading the book is not an accomplishment. So like I
think you were telling us about this book a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, in my defense, it is public domain because it is at least 70 years after the author's death, so it is not an easy read.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fun words in that book. Anyways, but so I've started reading that. But really, what I have been listening to Name of the Wind again, and so this kind of kicked off from our previous episode where we were talking about the top 5 board games and top 5 books.
Yeah,
right. Where Name of the Wind dropped off.
Name of the Wind.
Yeah, and it dropped off both of our list, and I was just like, that used to be one of my favorite books, and I just don't remember it that well. Like, why was it?
You lucky bastard.
And so I'm rereading it. I'm probably about 50% of the way through it at this point.
Okay.
Re-listening to it. Oh my goodness, it's such a good book, right? Like, and I think that like he does such a good job of telling stories within stories and making all of those stories feel unique. So the main character is a bard in some sense. So he's telling his story of his life, right? And so in the story, the story is about someone telling a story. And then while he's telling a story, he's telling stories that have been told to him. So it's a story about a story about a story. And like each one of those, depending on who's telling it, feels unique and different. And I just love the descriptions and the pacing of that book. It's just incredible. And like it fell off our list because it's been 11 years since the second book and we're still waiting on that third. And let's be honest, we're probably not going to get it. Yeah. And so that makes it really hard. But it's just one of those books that I am super happy that I went back and reread because I think I read it before the podcast started, obviously, because it was on my top 5 in our second episode.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, it's been 4 years since I read it. Wow. And like, it's been a nice rewind to that. I've been really enjoying it. So.
Yeah. And I'm sure it fits well into those books that give you like a little bit of a comfort, a little bit of,
right. Yeah.
You know, because like a lot of parts of that book are very pleasant, you know, like they're just very enjoyable. And there are some parts that are dark and scary and intense, and like it has all of that for sure. Yeah. But it has excellent pacing. You know, it has this really nice like ebb and flow of him, like, you know, joining the academy or whatever it's called, the school that he ends up at, and the friends that he's making, and you know, there's a budding romance going on, and you know, and so there's just a lot of these elements where you feel like it's just a fun story to like listen to, and then there's parts where it just like really grabs you by the heartstrings, or really, you know, makes your heart race and your blood pound, and you're like, holy
and
cow.
How quickly he can make that change too, I think is really interesting. Yeah. And something that I've really appreciated on the reread is that because it's a story about someone telling a story, they are able to kind of play with the meta a little bit. I don't think that's a right way to say that, but you know, there are times where Kavoth, the main character who's telling the story, is like, I need to tell it in this way because of this. And so you kind of understand why the story is being told in the like timeline that it's being told, because he told you. And I said told a lot right there. Yeah. But like it opens up so many interesting and unique like ways to tell this story that it's just so good. It's incredibly well done. It's not going to make it back into my top 5, right? Like I love the book, but until we get closure of that series, I cannot put it in a top 5 list at this point. Yeah. So as much as I love it, as much as I like will read it again, it's almost like a bittersweet, like I'm reading it, but there's no ending. And that's hard. Yeah.
Maybe at some point you'll get a living card game to put out, you know, a sequel campaign that finishes the story for you.
Or like a call to adventure game. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah. Exactly.
You have that, right?
Like, I have the Name of the Wind expansion. Yeah, I enjoy it. I've played it just like once or twice, and I think I enjoy it because of the IP. You know,
right?
It doesn't add like so much to the game where I have to have it or I have to play with it. You know,
right?
But it has naming as a mechanic, and that's really fun. So,
yep,
gotta love it.
It's a fun universe. It's a fun IP. What else have you been reading? I feel like there's a lot, right? Like,
yeah. So now that I've like transitioned, I like just did this big swap because I finished Rhythm and I finished book 3 of Wheel of Time, The Dragon Reborn.
Colon.
I finished those like within a couple of days of each other. So like I just switched my audiobook over and I just switched my physical book over. So I picked up a copy for my physical book of the sequel to Assassin's Apprentice, which is a book that I actually kind of made fun of a little bit because it was a book that at the start of the book I didn't like it, and then by the end of the book I was like, hey, this is pretty good. And it grew like this is it's the book where the main character wasn't named, and I really had trouble like connecting with him for a long time.
Gotcha. I remember. Yeah.
And everybody calls him Fitz. because Fitz means like son of, right? So like Fitzpatrick is like son of Patrick, and he is a bastard, and he doesn't like, and so people would call him Fitz as like an insult, and he just kind of like adopted that as his name. And anyway, so this is like
I kind of
book 2.
love that. Like, I think that's super interesting, and like, I really like it.
Yeah, I liked it. I just didn't like that it like became obvious like 50% of the way through the book.
Yeah.
Like that's what his name was going to be.
Yeah.
Especially since it's told from first person. It's like that was confusing. But anyway, so I picked up book 2. Book 2 so far, I'm really liking the pacing of it. It has like an exposition. It just like, it feels like it picked up exactly where I wanted it to. It's like getting right into action. It's getting like right into continuing stories of like the characters that I care about and everything. So like, it's kind of continuing from the high point right now. You know what I mean? Like it sort of like sloped up as in my enjoyment as the book went on. And now it's like continuing on that like high point. I wouldn't say it's like ramping up or ramping down. It's just kind of like continuing. It's much shorter. Like it's like, but everything is much shorter than Rhythm of War. But like I just, like I was like, oh my god, I'm like 200 pages into this book, and it took me. I would read like 12 pages a night with Rhythm,
Yeah.
and for like 200 in like 5 days. So the pacing's like a lot more enjoyable. That it's like, okay, I'm getting into like not that the pacing of Rhythm is bad or unenjoyable, but it's daunting, right? And so this one is more bite size, more manageable, where it's like, okay,
right,
I feel like I'm getting towards the middle action in the book, and I'm starting to hit like
it's
these
fun size.
Yeah, exactly, fun size. These tension points, and it's just kind of the more normal story arc progression. And so it's I think the book is
normal books are not 45 hours long.
That's right.
Turns out. Who knew? But
I think that return to kind of familiarity is just refreshing and nice. So it's kind of basic fantasy. It has a soft magic system, but I'm enjoying it. Book 2 is called Royal Assassin. So like I said, towards the end of the book, it was getting into like some more political aspects of him being like an assassin and having to make like decisions on his own from like a political and intrigue perspective. And it's kind of trying to continue to play into that. So that part of the book I'm enjoying as well.
Nice. Very cool.
And then I'm finishing up Witcher. So started book 7 of Witcher. I'm only like a couple hours in, so I can't speak.
We have season 2. Have you watched it?
Yes, I really enjoyed season 2 of Witcher.
My wife watched it for some reason. Like I really enjoyed the show, but it was just like she was like, "Do you want to watch this with me?" I was like, "No." Like I don't know why. Like I really enjoyed first season, but I need to go back and watch second season, but I did not grasp at the opportunity. So I'm glad to hear that you really liked the second season.
Yeah, I liked it. It switches from, so like if you remember the first season, it's like telling the short stories that are kind of like the prequel books of the Witcher series.
Yeah.
And so it took those 2 books and kind of crammed them into one season. And they totally just ignored timelines. So like, you know what? Fuck it. You're an intelligent audience. You figure it out. Like, we're not going to explain this to you. And so you watch it and you're like, what the hell? Like, it's so hard to like follow. And then like, as it goes on, you're like, oh, I remember this. And you can kind of piece it together. By the end, it starts to make sense. And you almost need to watch it a second time to be like, I need to like figure out what happened. The second season is telling like a linear story through like what was the first book published. And so it was kind of like official book 1 of the series. But I think it's actually like the third book I read, because I read the 2 prequel books first.
Nice.
But it's telling kind
that
of
actually sounds
story.
a lot more enjoyable.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think that was my critique with the season 1, is that I was like, I don't know what timeline we're in. It was just hard to follow. And I think on a rewatch that'd be a lot easier and a lot better. But like to have a linear storyline makes me very happy.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's much more simple, much more straightforward to follow. It does do a little bit of interpretation. There was, again, some things that I was struggling with of like, I kind of like the way that was told in the original story. I don't know if I like that you added that. They kind of added a bad guy. Like they felt like, I think, needed to be a bad guy for the season or something. And so like they created one.
Gotcha.
And again, the characters kind of got to where they were supposed to get to, but just like the way that they got there was like a little bit different. And I'm trying not to like mind that. I'm trying not to be like, oh, it's just different than the book, like, and I'm trying not to be that guy. I'm trying to, it is an art form. They have a right to their own interpretation. They have a right to, if they're just redoing someone else's art, then the actors have a chance to shine, but the writers don't necessarily have a chance to shine, and the directors and everything, like, so there's reasons why they do it. And I get that.
Right.
There's also like reasons why something fits better in a book setting versus a TV setting, right? They need to make sure that the story tells well in a TV setting, in a show setting. And so I get all of those things. I'm trying not to, again, be that guy who just gets mad just because it's different or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
But I thought it was a weird thing to do. I thought it was a weird thing to add a major bad guy just to like have a plot for have a slightly different plot for the season. I thought that was a weird decision.
Yeah. That's fair.
Yep.
Well, I'll need to watch that. Did you, in the professional podcasters that we are, I don't remember the name, but did you watch the animated film on Netflix?
Not yet. No, I've been meaning to. My fiance isn't interested in watching it, so I'm having to find time to like carve out a time slot to watch it on my own.
Yeah, I mean, you could get her a spa day or something, and then you could watch it.
That's right. Get out of the house.
2 birds. Nice. Yeah, that I need to watch season 2. So I will watch season 2 if you watch the animated film. How about that?
Okay, sounds good.
We'll make one of those other packs that I'm so good at upholding.
Yes.
Seeing that I'm 60% through Wheel of Time.
Twice. You've been 60% of the way through it twice, though. So that counts as 120%.
Exactly. I basically finished the book.
Basically.
Yeah. Oh, man. Okay, so we have to talk about this real quick. So September 2nd, 2022, we get our first episode of the new Lord of the Rings series, Rings of Power. And I don't know if I have been hyped for so little of what they have put out so far in a long time, right? Like, have you seen any of the teaser stuff?
I've not, no. I've just seen it pop up on Amazon, and I almost almost click on it, but then I don't.
So Rings of Power. So we finally have a name for the new series. Rings of Power is debuting on September 2nd, 2022, and it is set sometime in the Second Age. We don't quite know what that is. We know that Galadriel is the main character, so that really means jack shit for when it is in the Second Age, because she's kind of around a lot of that. And so, but there's a teaser. I'm not even going to call it a trailer. There's a teaser that announced the name that was actually like the forging of melting down the hot metal and then pouring it into the cast that spelled out the Rings of Power, which was beautifully done. And then we got today, which probably dates this podcast a little bit. Today we got movie poster or like TV posters for it. So it's a bunch of, and it's just like the hands of everyone, and it has like all the Rings of Power on like the hands holding swords or different things.
So do you think in like the fall of men, men wielding the Rings of Power and politics and like that sort of setting?
So this is kind of interesting, right? Because we know the story.
Yeah.
Right? So the story's been published. It's throughout the Silmarillion and a couple of other of Tolkien's works. And so we kind of know what the story is. So once we get a starting point, we kind of know where it's going. I think we're going to get a lot of Numenor, which will be really interesting. Numenor is this island that is no longer around, that had like the Numenorians that came from it. And at one point they capture Sauron. And so I think we may be seeing that plot line, which I think would be pretty cool. I don't think it starts with that. I think that would be kind of hard. I think maybe we get a season finale or something like that. But every season is 20 episodes, and I think we're already confirmed for 5 seasons.
Wow.
So
that's a lot of content.
Yeah, we got some content to go through. And so that's really exciting. We've got the budget for it because it's Amazon, and they don't care at all about money. And so I know Bezos is a huge Lord of the Rings fan, and so that only is good for us.
Right.
So the way that they're doing it is just teasing me so much, because it's they're not giving us anything, but they're giving us so much to talk about, and I'm loving it. So September 2nd, expect me to be out of commission for about a week, because I'll just be rewatching that over and over and over. Oh man, I'm so excited for it. I'm so pumped. It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, me too. I don't know. It's fantasy's like the big thing right now, and it goes through these waves for sure. But it feels like every show wants to be Game of Thrones. We talked about this a lot, and this is Amazon continuing to play into that, right? Like Wheel of Time is trying to be that. I think they just see that right now. There's a big culture around it. There's a big following for it, and this is like, I don't know, like the three. We've always talked about the 3 films are some of the better book to film adaptations out there. Like these are big shoes to fill,
Oh yeah.
And I would be, especially because like I loved the way that like orcs were done. I loved the way that like the Balrog is shown. I love the way that like magic is done. I love the way the Ents look. Just like visually, I like a lot about it. Right. And Amazon is also again doing Wheel of Time, And there are some things that visually I don't really like about it. That I don't really like the way that the magic's done. I don't really like the way the Trollocs look. You know, like they look like too animated to me. I'm like, man, why don't they just look like orcs? Orcs look awesome. Like, you know. And so they're big shoes. I guess that's where I'm going with it.
Yep.
You know.
Yep. Big shoes to fill. But and I think it was you that may have said it on a previous episode or just like while we were talking. It's like it's either going to be amazing or it is going to be so bad.
Yeah.
Like there's no middle ground for this show.
Yeah.
Right? You have to knock it out of the park or you are going to like pop fly.
Yeah.
Like it's oh man, I really hope that they have spent their money in the right spot
for sure
to make it good, right? So
for sure.
I'm so pumped.
I'm excited, man. Now just got to wait 7 more months.
Yeah, and that should go by pretty quickly, right? Like that is that's right around close to when, the wedding is.
That's
so.
right. Yeah, a couple months from there.
Not to put it into perspective or anything.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
yeah. Yeah.
I have so much more to talk about, but we have been talking for a while, especially for a fireside. So I think, we'll tease it a little bit. So we got more to talk about, but we'll talk a little bit more. But unless you had anything else.
No, I'm in that same boat. Like we have tried to keep these firesides to under an hour. I don't think that this one is going to end up there. I think it'll be a little bit more. But again, we haven't done table and mind content in a while. We had a lot to cover, and you're right, still more to come. But this is I think a good place to sign off. So,
well, it was great talking with you. I'm excited to be back doing these firesides. I enjoy these, and so
absolutely
excited to be doing these again. So yeah, you can find us anywhere. The main places to find us are Instagram and our Discord, and so you can find all of those links in the show notes, which are below. I actually do YouTube channel. Like YouTube videos now, so it feels weird to make fun of that at that point.
To be
so
that
like,
guy. Yeah.
Do it below, and like I have videos that I actually do that now. So I've sold out. That's all I'm saying. But
he's a phony.
He's a phony. Oh jeez. But those are the best places to find us. And let's talk about Lord of the Rings. Let's talk about Wheel of Time. We got spoiler channels for all of that stuff, and so. If you wanna vent, we're here for that.
We're here for it. So
excellent,
awesome.
Well,
it was great talking with you. Man.
Great talking with you too.
Cheers.